Ascomycota by Dylan, Michaela, Lindsay, and Alicia. So some background on it. What does Ascomycota mean? And they are commonly referred to as ascomycetes. Asco is the Greek word for a jar or bag. Mycetes is the word for fungi. So if you put the words together, it's basically fungi that are shaped like sacs or vessels. And you can see in the picture on the PowerPoint that they are shaped like vessels. And in the lab manual, it said that sac fungi lives in a variety of habitats and are in a symbiotic relationship. And the symbiotic relationship is mutualism. Septate and dikaryotic cells in most of its life cycle. Sexual spores produced in ascus, a structure that gives the group its name, and there's about 60,000 species. Some major and important species. A lot of these species in Ascomycota, they have to do with food. So you'll see they cause powdery mildew on grapes, Dutch elm disease, chestnut blight, and apple scab. And all of these made trees extinct in the U.S. And Ascomycetes, the common yeast, whose varieties leaven the dough and bread making and ferment grain to produce beer or mash for distillation of alcoholic liquors. The strains, they ferment grape juice to wine. And then Eurospora is a genus of widespread species, produces bakery mold and red bread mold, and it has been used extensively in genetic and biochemical investigations. So a little overview on mutualism before we go into Ascomycota. Symbiosis is the interaction between organisms in the same environment. There's many different types. One is parasitism, but in Ascomycota it's mutualism. And mutualism is when both organisms benefit from the relationship, and basically it's essentially they're working together and making use of each other's. So a simple example is like a bee to the flower. So a bee gets nectar from the flower, which is its food and nutrients, and then the flower benefits from when the bee goes from flower to flower, it's pollinating it. So both of them are working together and using each other. So some mutualistic relationships in Ascomycota. So they form symbiosis with algae, which is lysins, and plant roots or the leaves and stems of plants. So basically, fungi, they are incapable of photosynthesis because they do lack chlorophyll. So instead, they have to seek food from outside sources, which is like the algae and the bark. And they absorb the nutrients from them, and then the algae, they can conduct photosynthesis, so they help the fungi, so it's mutualistic. Other Ascomycota, they form symbiotic associations with an array of arthropods. And so lion beetle galleries, they provide nutrients for developing larvae, the Ascomycota. So in return, beetles, they help transport the newly established galleries and spread Ascomycota. Reproduction in Ascomycota. So they're sexually reproduced by spores, and these spores are stored in the sac of the fungi, like we said before, in the ascus. In most Ascomycetes, the ascus contains 8 ascospores and is turgid. The spores are ejected by a squirt mechanism. Asexual reproduction in condophores, specialized sporogenia that produce asexual spores called condia by mitosis. They spread asexually when the condia are released and carried by air currents to new locations. So the anatomy, the body of the ascocarp is composed of intertwined hyphae packed closely together, as you can see in the picture. The hyphae, if you could see them, they contain 2 genetically distinct haploid nuclei, and it just depends on which stage of the life cycle they're on. The chitinous cell wall surrounds the cytoplasm, and the hyphae is a single cell is single cell thick and increases in length, not girth. And this allows the immobile organism to grow into new areas and take advantage of the fresh food materials. Some important and interesting species. One is a source of penicillin, and the other one is a foundation of baking soda and brewing industries. So like the beer and the bread making, that's what that's used for. And penicillin is used for medical use. Some random and interesting statistics. Ascomycota is the largest phylum of fungi. There are approximately 64,000 known species. More than 40% of all named Ascomycota are lichenized, and lichenized fungus is defined as two organisms functioning as a single stable unit, just like in the mutualistic relationship described before. And as of 2001, Ascomycota covered 8% of Earth land masses. And that's the end of the presentation.